Delegate Chris Head's office from Southwest Virginia. Delegate Head with us here. Lots going on, lots to talk about. And first of all, Delegate Head, Chris Head, we want to thank you for allowing us to use your very nice office here, very spacious, overlooking the Capitol grounds where they're putting a fence up around it. So we want to talk about that. Welcome to the show, Delegate.
Well, thank you, John. It's good to be here, and I'm glad to have you here in the office.
I know, thank you. And thanks for coming in early.
Oh, glad to.
Also, I really appreciate it. And your able staff there got everything set up for me, and we got our little studio here right in your office. So thank you for that. Let's get to some of the gun issues here that are coming up. First of all, Todd Gilbert, your minority leader, had a statement yesterday, and he's saying, look, I want to see what the evidence is that the governor has to shut the Capitol grounds down, fence it in, and there's only one point of entry. So we talked about that ad nauseum yesterday. What did you think of this whole thing, Chris?
Well, I mean, this entire process has, to me, been a complete overreaction. You've got a lot of people in a lot of newly electeds, I think, that really don't have any understanding of why people are so upset about threats to their Second Amendment rights. And they're finding out that everybody does not, in fact, believe just like they do. You know, you come out of a Beltway mindset. Everybody doesn't think like that. And if you've never been in areas around the state where we live our lives a little differently, you know, we deal with family, we deal with conservative issues, we don't wrestle with traffic as our primary issue, and we are instead trying to just make a living and take care of folks. And one of the things that we do recreationally is maybe hunt and fish and shoot, and we want to protect ourselves too. We also live in an area where if you call the police, they'll come as quickly as they can. That may be 45 minutes because it's a long way, and or an hour because it's a long way. You know, I think in terms of the framing this back when Senator Deeds went through the tragic incident with his son. Yeah. And we got in a conversation not about weapons and firearms and law enforcement, but in terms of, you know, what can we do? Why can't we get somebody into a mental health facility or get them into treatment? How far away is the closest hospital if you're coming out of Bath County? And we said, you know, an hour. And they said, well, why couldn't they come to Roanoke? How long does that take? I said, you know, and they said, it's only 45 miles. I said, yeah, it takes an hour. Because it's twisty, turning roads coming down the mountains. Right. And they said, well, couldn't they go to Charlottesville? How long does that take? They said, you know, it takes an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes, like that. You know, is there no place closer? No, there's not. I mean, that's just the reality of where we live. It's very rural. It's very mountainous. You're dealing with a lot of different things. If you've never been there, if you've never looked at any of those things, if you've never understood that life is different and we have to live our lives like the place that we live, you know, and then when you start coming in and saying, we're going to change everything, we're going to start making you adhere to our lifestyle and morals and concerns, you know, in Northern Virginia for the rest of the state. You know, people bristle at that. There's always been the joke about you've got Nova and then you've got Rova, rest of Virginia, right? That wasn't the case as much even when I first got here. It has gotten to be much more divisive, and I'd really love to see us find a way to start listening to each other and reaching out. So anyway, back to the issue with the guns. I think you've got a real sense of anxiety and concern. You know, you talk to folks that simply don't understand firearms. I grew up in a family where, again, I'm a North Georgia boy, but still growing up out in the country, and I shot my first shotgun when I was 4 years old. Remember it really, really well. Yeah, I remember it well. And the reason I remember it so well is because my daddy told me to make sure I put the stock right up against my shoulder or it was going to hurt. And it scared me because I'd been watching them shoot, and they'd been, and of course I did what many children would do, and in fear, just before I pull that trigger, I pulled it off my shoulder just a little bit, and I cried because it hurt when it kicked back and hit my shoulder. I never did that again, learned a lesson, but I started learning about, they've just always been around as a part of things. Then I have shared with folks here in conversation, when I was in high school, if it was hunting season, I'd never been a hunter, but when I was in high school, if it was deer season, every truck, every car in the parking lot that had a young man that had driven to school that day had a loaded shotgun or rifle in the rack on the back of the truck or in the trunk of the car, because you'd been out hunting before school or you were going to go after school, or both. And it was just there on the campus of the school, and nobody would have ever dreamed of doing anything about that or being concerned about it. It was just, okay, that's just who we are, that's what we do. Those days are gone. The laws have changed. You can't do anything like that. We're not teaching anything about it. But when you've got a whole society that has grown up around that, and that's just normal, and nobody worries about it, for somebody that's been taught from the time they first came in, the only thing they learn about guns is what schools teach, which is not a bad thing to teach. But when a child, if you see a gun, what do you do? Say, stop, don't touch, run away, tell an adult. There is this total fear. Now, we do that to say, if you find a weapon that's laying out there unattended, children, that is exactly what you must do, is make sure you don't do something like that. But at the same time, the weapon itself is not the thing to fear. The recklessness of someone that left it laying around is what you should be fearful of and angry about. We need to take care of that. And then learning how we manage it. It just, so anyway, the reaction to all of this, here at the Capitol has just really gotten out of control. And when you've got folks that across the Commonwealth have come out in droves to express their grave concern about constitutional rights being taken away.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. I'm your Godzilla of the Truth in America. We're live here at the General Assembly today. It's Friday at the House of Delegates, and with us live is House of Delegates member from the Roanoke area, Southwest Virginia, Chris Head. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, when you've got this many people that have come out, I know the first county of my district that voted was Botetourt, and when I went to the Botetourt County Board of Supervisors meeting, and it was at 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon, and you have 450 people come out. And understand, Botetourt's a really rural county.
It's about as rural as you're going to get.
Well, no, you can go farther southwest and it gets a lot more rural. But Botetourt's pretty rural county. And you get 450 people come out on the afternoon to express their concerns, and they do it peacefully.
Some of them had to leave at 9 a.m. to get there.
Yeah, well, probably not. But they did have to leave jobs, or if they had taken a day off. There was one gentleman that stood up and said, look, this is deer season, and deer season's short, and ordinarily I had planned to take the day off, and I'd ordinarily be up in a deer stand. However, this is more important. You need to know that this is important, and you gotta do everything you can to protect our constitutional rights. And that's really the piece of this that I think escapes a lot of people. The Constitution is there. The right to keep and bear arms is there, and precisely to keep government from doing what government is trying to do, which is limit the power of the people and limit access of the power of the people to the power. And, I'm very concerned that what we've got going on here at the Capitol now is not only an infringement of Second Amendment rights, but also First Amendment rights, because we're now not able to people can't come peaceably assemble as unencumbered as they should, and they're not being able to petition their government as unencumbered as they should.
Right.
And we're shutting the Capitol off. I think it sends the wrong message.
Absolutely.
I just really think it sends the wrong message. And the more you try to clamp this thing down, the worse it's going to get. And so okay, we'll see. I hope and pray that we, quite literally hope and pray that we do not have any sort of an outburst. I cannot fathom that the people that I know that are coming, or the groups that are organizing people to coming that I might be associated with or in support of, will do anything other than be peaceful and polite and cordial, but visible. And that's their duty when they're trying to protect their rights. We got some reports of some outside groups that we don't have any verification on. We'll see what they, if they do. We've got an enormous amount of law enforcement that's here. I can't imagine anything much erupting, because certainly they are prepared for something absolutely massive.
I think you're right. I think closing the grounds, closing it off, fencing it in, one point of entry for 80,000 people. Northam did this to choke the thing off, drive it out into the streets, create a spectacle.
Well, here's the interesting thing about that is you just think in terms of logistically, you've made it problematic. But also, if there was anybody that's going to be a bad actor, now you've spread everything out into the streets where they can't control it as well. And if anybody wanted to be concerned, you funnel everything into a very, very narrow area, and that it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. We've got to be logical with what we're doing, and I'm not seeing anything other than reactionary stuff. Responding is a good thing. Reacting is never a good thing. And reacting out of fear rather than just in preparation is a very bad thing. Bowing to fear. That's the one thing that I'm most concerned with, is that we are in
bowing to fear.
We're in an area where everything is driven by fear, anxiety,
worry,
hatred. Everything negative you can imagine.
Well, that's the whole thing. The governor was intent on changing the narrative to 100,000 peaceful Virginians coming to the Capitol to have their voices heard, to organize and mobilize for the next election, register to vote, do all that stuff, make their voices heard. They're not going to stand for their Second Amendment rights to be infringed. Northam now turned this into like some kind of a mob is coming. And VCDL has been doing this, Chris said, as you know, for 30 years on Lobby Day.
Yeah.
And it's without incident, all peaceful. And what we've been saying on the radio for 3 weeks is, look, if you care about your gun rights, if you care about the Second Amendment, and if you care about free speech, take the day off, get a sick day if you have to go to work, or one of the personal days that are allowed to us. Come here, be heard. And here's our message. Number one, take the bus. Go to vcdl.org. $35 anywhere in Virginia. They got 100 buses coming. Take the bus.
Well, I think they're all full now, right?
Yeah,
so,
but
whatever.
They'll keep adding them. Take the bus. $35. Don't pack a gun. Pack a lunch. Don't bring a gun. Bring a friend. Because this isn't about walking around with guns. This is about being heard. That's all you have to do. We want a peaceful rally, but we want a show that people in Virginia are not going to stand for this. And the only thing that these politicians worry about, present company excluded, is getting voted out of office. And if you show them 100,000 people, some of them are going to say, in some of these swing areas, maybe I should rethink this. That's the purpose of the rally. And Ralph Northam hijacked it by saying that it was some kind of an unruly mob that was coming. And that's just not true.
It's never been.
It's never been.
Every year, VCDL comes in here with those wonderful orange stickers that say "Guns Save Lives." Right. This interesting. What was it? New Year's, right around New Year's, the tragic shooting that happened down in Texas in the church. Right. It's interesting to me how that narrative has been hijacked. You had a gunman who came into a church, and that was horrifying that this happened. And 6 seconds later, it was over because there were people in the church who were armed and took care of things. And
this
it's interesting.
This guy,
down in Texas.
Right. So if he didn't have the gun and he didn't shoot the perpetrator, right? How many more people would have died?
How many more people would die?
50, 30,
Who knows?
10?
Who knows?
Right,
it doesn't matter.
Him.
But it would have been a lot more. It was over and done with. The fact that anybody died, including the gunman, that's tragic that anybody lost their life. But it ended a lot more quickly because he was armed and able to defend not only himself but the other people that were around him. Now, what's interesting is, first of all, it didn't make a lot of news because that doesn't fit the narrative that anybody wants to have. But
right.
Secondly, when it did make the news, people were highlighting the fact that this is a guy that is a trained firearms instructor and that he knows really what he's doing. And can you imagine how horrifying it would have been if some of the other people in the sanctuary who had firearms had been the ones to shoot, because they might not have known what they were doing. The problem is, the vast majority of people that I know that have concealed carry permits and that would be carrying have really great gun training, and they know what they're doing.
Look, it's the fake news. Chris Head. We're with House of Delegates member, Republican Chris Head, Southwest Virginia, west of the Roanoke area. He's with us today. We're also broadcasting live in his office. This is Open Mic Friday. We got a lot of people that will be coming in. Joe Waymack just handed me something from Steve Herrick's office. He says, if you come to Richmond and you don't take the bus, you can park at Diamond and shuttle over on buses provided by VCDL. What is Diamond? Hey Joe, we don't know what Diamond is, so come on.
At the Diamond.
At the Diamond.
Yeah.
Where
the Diamond, the baseball park.
At the baseball park. Okay, well, some people
Right.
don't know what
The
that
Diamond.
is. So you can park at the Richmond Squirrels baseball park, right? Is that it?
I think that's what he's saying there.
Joe,
So,
come in here and help us. The Richmond Squirrels baseball
Right.
park, the Diamond. I don't know what that is. Is that?
But people around here know what it is.
Okay, well, if you're coming from outside of here, you don't know what that is. So
except there's a big sign on the interstate that says the Diamond.
Okay, so if you're
can
coming
park
to
there.
Richmond and you want to drive, you can park at the Diamond, which is the Richmond Squirrels AA baseball stadium, and then VCDL will shuttle you over and shuttle you back.
Right.
And this is the other thing that I just couldn't believe what the governor did. All these buses are leaving at 2 p.m. They have made that very clear that that you're out of there too. So they get in at 9 or 10, you're out at 2. It's a 4-hour rally, right? By 5 o'clock, it's over. All the governor had to do was get the right people in place, let us have our rally, and go home and be peaceful. Come and talk to your legislators. That's all he had to do. And now he turns it into this, like it's some kind of a mob descending on Richmond, talking about that he had a report that the rally goers were going to storm the Capitol, take over the government, occupy our offices like the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. I mean, come on,
I mean,
Chris.
they've been coming every year.
It's like Alex Jones' InfoWars.
It's just, it is an overreach. When VCDL has come every year, they'll walk through. You'll have folks from all over the Commonwealth that are here. Many, maybe most of whom in years past have been carrying, many of them open carrying, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, This is, holster on the belt kind of thing. That's there to prove a point. That simply is there to prove a point. But there are an awful lot of folks in the building that day that are walking around. It's always intrigued me that some of my colleagues are very nervous about that, and they close and lock their doors and don't want to see any constituents that come in looking like that. I've seen that happen, and it because they're just wigged out by the concept that somebody might actually have a firearm. I frequently will have 8, 10, 12, 15 people in here carrying in my office, and it's just everybody's shaking hands and saying thank you and just protect our Second Amendment rights, and they go. I've never seen anybody say anything caustic. I've never seen anybody act in any way that is in any way considered aggressive. It simply is making their presence known. That's what you're supposed to do as a citizen when there's something that's important to you. Get involved in the process. That's what's happening here. This is a really sensitive issue. The only thing that I'm concerned about with this at all, literally the only thing that I'm concerned with, aside from now the overreach and potentially what could boil over because of the way it's been handled, is that this becomes the only issue that anybody's concerned about this session. And there's so much more that we need to be concerned with about the governance of the Commonwealth and the direction that everything else is going. Because we got a lot of really interesting, big spending, big government, big controlling of our lives kind of issues that are coming in this session that have nothing to do with firearms. And we need to be paying attention to all of it. And I really don't want us to be totally myopically focused on firearms. But for the next couple of days of session,
all we're going to talk
that's
about.
all you're going to hear.